So anyway, that's when I said, Brittany, he doesn't even have any fur. How do you expect a relationship with this guy to be anything but toxic? Well, if it isn't man's best friend.
Leave me alone, Chelsea. I'm just grabbing my things.
You just met this guy and you're already moving in with him?
Yeah, so his fire keeps me warm. He and his tribe will share their meat scraps with me, and he knows how to scratch my ears in this way that I adore.
OMG, Brittany. That man, he's gonna change you, and girl, we aren't gonna be able to save you.
You guys are being ridiculous. I would never let any hairless ape change me.
Friends don't let friends become domesticated. Learn how you and your species can avoid being pugified by the human menace on this episode of Happybara. Hello everyone and welcome to Happybara. I'm Dr. Happy, and today we're going to be talking about the life and times of man's best friend, good old Canis lupus familiaris, aka the dog. I'm gonna start by clearing the air here. I love dogs, but domestication is a frickin' scam. They lure you in with free food and shelter, and the next thing you know, BAM! Your great-great-grandchild is a weird goblin thing with spine issues whose eyes could pop out if they sneeze too hard. That's why, to save the capybara species, I've elected to bite every single hand that's ever fed me. It's also why I'm banned from using the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. Now, just because I got beef with domestication doesn't mean it hasn't worked out for the animals who have gone through with it. Dogs were the first ever animals to be domesticated by humans, which kinda makes them the poster child for success via human simping, which, to play devil's advocate, isn't really deserved. From a surface level, the relationship between humans and dogs is master and pet. But from an evolutionary perspective, it's more like player 1 and player 2. The domestication of the dog was actually one of humanity's biggest developmental milestones. Things like hunting, herding, and farming could have never happened the way we know and love if it weren't for the humble dog. So it's not completely unfounded to say that if dogs never existed, neither would humanity as we know it. Today, dogs are one of the most successful animals on the planet, with over 900 million individuals living worldwide, with a whopping 340 breeds being recognized by the American Kennel Club. But worldwide, off the books, that number could be up to 500. So that begs the question, what's so special about dogs that they became so successful and beloved and not, say, I don't know, capybaras or something? Well, to answer that question, we'll turn back our clocks to the dawn of dog. Around 45 million years ago, the order Carnivora split into two distinct genetic lineages, Feliformia and Cainiformia. I'll mail you a cookie if you can guess which one the dogs fall under. During the late Eocene, Earth began to go through a period of cooling, leading to the decline of densely forested areas and the rise of open grasslands. These conditions heavily favored animals that could chase down their prey. To put it in fat American terms, it was a world of drive-thrus, but the drive-thru was running super frickin' fast and the animals that relied on Postmates were on a path to extinction. This meant a new family of long-legged freaks would eventually split off from the rest of the caniforms and just kinda do its own thing. This was the family Canidae, but we're gonna go ahead and focus on one particular group of these canids: wolves. Wolves are spectacular creatures and may end up with a video of their own. But this video is about how quivering rats and living mops were allowed to draw breath in the first place. So we're gonna sideline the specifics on wolves for right now. Evidence suggests that modern dogs descended from a population of Eurasian gray wolves around 35,000 years ago during the late Pleistocene, and it can be assumed that life for these wolves was similar to modern wolves. They would have lived in complex social groups consisting of a handful of family units, and would have used this social intelligence to take on prey that would be considered to be way out of their weight class. The African wild dog is a prime example of a modern animal that uses this technique, and it's one of the most successful hunters on Earth, sporting an 85 to 90% success rate. So you can imagine that life during the late Pleistocene was pretty good for these wolves, until humans showed up to mess it all up like they always do. Well, at least they're consistent. When Homo sapiens arrived in Eurasia around 100,000 years ago, this population of wolves was less than welcoming. This was because humans were a species that lived in complex social groups consisting of a handful of family units that took on prey outside of their weight class. Now, who does that remind us of? Both humans and wolves filled the exact same ecological niche, and neither them nor the hairless invaders were willing to share. That's right, at the very beginning, man's best friend was man's most bitter rival. Yeah, I know, it was an enemies to lovers arc. There, I said it. Now all you weird anime people can leave. Surprisingly, some more enterprising wolves, especially those without packs, didn't consider these encroaching human tribes to be a threat, but an opportunity. These rare individuals discovered that if they behaved less aggressively towards humans, they would be able to get closer to their camps and feed on leftover meat. Over time, these more docile wolves would pass on their genes, lending to human-friendly populations of wolves popping up around areas where humans had settled. Humans, sharing the same opportunistic mindset as their new canine neighbors, began to find uses for these not-quite dogs, such as assisting in hunting, tracking, and guarding the camp from other predators. Meanwhile, I'm still working on training my dog to file my taxes. He's got the spirit, but I keep getting letters from the IRS, and I doubt the "my dog ate last year's tax return" excuse is gonna fly. Because of the similarities that they already shared, wolves were easily incorporated into the human societal structure and went from stalking the outskirts to staying warm by the campfire, a concept that humans also invented. These early dogs would have been barely distinguishable from their wolfish cousins. Two of the most noticeable changes would have been their overall smaller size and shorter muzzles, both traits that were selectively bred for by humans looking for more docile companions. From then on, the relationship between Paleolithic man and dog becomes a bit fuzzy. We're not sure the exact time where these wolves stopped being wolves and became dogs. The first evidence of a 100% confirmed dog was found in 1914 in Oberkassel, a suburb outside of Bonn, Germany. These fossil remains, creatively named the Bonn-Oberkassel dog, are the earliest evidence of a domesticated dog that we know of. These 14,000-year-old remains are remarkable for another reason besides it just being the first dog. Buried alongside the Bonn-Oberkassel dog are two other sets of fossil remains, one being a middle-aged man and the other a young woman. But this human and dog bond goes beyond just sharing a grave. The Bonn-Oberkassel dog shows signs that it survived canine distemper at a very young age, which is a contagious virus found in most canines. Now, there is no way that such a young dog would have survived on its own if it was struggling with canine distemper. Let's put that in perspective here. Imagine that you're a Paleolithic human. You gotta worry about disease, finding proper nutrition, conflict from other humans, migrating to find food and escape the weather, all in the hopes that one day you don't just get unlucky and get drug off into the night by a saber-toothed cat, never to be seen again. Okay, now take all of that, put it in your back pocket. Now imagine that you see that your new puppy's feeling a little sick. So in addition to all that crap I mentioned before, you become the world's first veterinarian and figure out how to treat a disease that doesn't even affect humans. Then when you inevitably keel over and die, you decide that you want to share your final resting place with your best friend. I think it's safe to say at this point in time, dogs had moved on from just being our scrap-eating neighbors. They were family. As humans continued to advance, dogs were right there alongside them. But while human society continued to develop, worrying about basic survival became less and less of a primary concern. Instead, humans were asking things like, how do I get the best animal fur? How do I get these sheep to go where I want them to?
How do I fill this vacant spot on my lap?
These new societal needs pushed humans to diversify and specialize their existence as a whole. And when humans do something, you know that dogs aren't far behind. Need something that's good for herding those other animals you domesticated? Well, dog has got you covered. Need to go somewhere fast? Why not dog? Need some pest control that you could just shove into dark and cramped places? Yeah, get yourself a dog up in there. Need a little warming device to soothe all those aches and pains? Well, you could go get a hot water bottle, or you could get a dog. Tall and small, lean and mean, fat and rat. Just like they did when they first met, humans saw potential in their canine companions, and dogs found a new way to please their humans. But now that concepts such as agriculture and industry were at the forefront, humans began to recognize desirable traits in their canine companions that went beyond just not wanting to rip your throat out. These were the first examples of humans using selective breeding in order to harness what used to be a natural process, in order to create living tools to serve specific needs. Geneticists still debate which dog breed is truly the oldest, but there's no arguing that a few of the dogs that we have in our living rooms are positively ancient. For example, there's evidence showing that sled dogs like the Siberian Husky were first bred over 9,500 years ago. And we all know Egyptians had a weird thing for cats, but you might be surprised to see that they were actually dog people too. Based on artwork created by ancient Egyptians, dogs resembling the Basenji, Greyhound, Ibizan, Pharaohhound, Saluki, and Whippet all lived among the ancient pharaohs, with their visage even inspiring one of the gods of their pantheon. Egyptians cared so much for their four-legged companions that many of them were even mummified alongside them. An ancient tablet discovered in 1935 tells the story and name of one of these mummified dogs. Abutiyu was a sighthound similar to a modern greyhound, who likely served as a royal guard dog during the 6th dynasty, and was given an elaborate burial in the Giza necropolis that most humans wish they could have had. This dog was given a coffin from the royal treasury, fine linens, incense, perfumed ointment, and a whole team of masons ordered to build it a private tomb. I know pharaohs were basically gods, but imagine being a stonemason working on your boss's dog tomb when you know that the best you're gonna get is a shallow hole in the desert. Despite the changes that dogs had undergone, they hadn't undergone any extreme changes just yet. You could still look at one of these things and say with 100% certainty that what you were looking at was an animal descended from a wolf and not some kind of alien. And it would stay that way for thousands of years, but as most things do in the ancient world, everything changed when the British arrived. You know 'em, you love 'em, your ancestors were probably colonized by 'em. It's the British Empire, here to see if you got a license for that dog and to sabotage oral health the world over. Funny enough, the insane diversity of dog breeds that we know today only dates back about 150 years ago with the introduction of dog shows during Britain's Victorian era. That's right, the British found a way to colonize dogs. The Victorians, spurred on by assertions made by a certain Charles Darwin, became obsessed with breeding the perfect specimens of standardized breeds, as well as creating brand new ones. In 1840, there were only 2 types of terrier. Today, there are 27. Over time, the templates for breed creation and standardization became less and less about serving a purpose. Instead, selective breeders cared more about things like history, art, anatomy, and overall aesthetics when deciding what makes a dog a dog. Dogs had become status symbols as much as they were companions, which led to many dog breeds being closely associated with class and gender. Sporting dogs were favored by the upper class, even though they were rarely used for any, sporting, while the middle class desired breeds that indicated style and wealth, with ladies gravitating towards toy breeds and fashionable ones, such as the Borzoi, because nothing says you got a hot wife more than having her walk around with a creature that looks like a living sock. At first, this practice of selective breeding was pretty harmless, but as humans are wont to do, they started getting a bit carried away. As dog shows became more and more popular, owners of purebred dogs gained both prestige and income from sales and stud fees, and with that came incentive to double down on the selective breeding, creating what are essentially caricatures of what these dog breeds initially were. Dachshunds have short legs, make them shorter. Pugs got flat faces, make them even flatter. German Shepherds are stocky, make them even stockier. You get the idea. As you can imagine, playing God and setting out to create caricatures of existing breeds by shortening an already limited gene pool down to only those with perfect attributes led to some complications. Let's say you own a dog that's the perfect example of a Great Dane. Everyone is gonna want to breed their dog with it. And when all your buddies at the kennel club are waving money in your face, it's kinda tempting to just throw your Great Dane in a kennel with a bunch of females and let it have the most exciting night of its doggy life. The problems arise when you realize that the next generation all have the same father, and that's when things start getting, royal. Did I mention it was the British that popularized this practice? Because I feel like that cannot be overstated. While all recognized breeds are the product of selective breeding, there are definitely some that have fared better than others. Huskies have autoimmune disorders, flat-faced dogs have respiratory issues, German Shepherds have hip dysplasia, Beagles get epilepsy, Dachshunds have spine issues, Bull Terriers look like toucans, Mini Schnauzers are exceptionally good at getting doggy diabetes, Pugs can just straight up have their eyes pop out of their skulls if the wind blows at them too hard, and sometimes Chihuahuas will just have their bowel movements switch from automatic to manual. Despite having every reason to be upset with humans for the whole eyeballs popping out of their head thing, dogs seem not to mind that much. In fact, of all the animals that humans have domesticated, dogs are the ones most capable of returning their affection. When determining whether or not the perceived affection from our pups is genuine, researchers will often compare domestic canines to their living ancestors. Studies have shown that when wolf pups are separated from their mother, they will avoid as much human contact as possible. Meanwhile, dog puppies will actively seek it out no matter what, while also being capable of understanding human gestures and eye contact from a very young age. In fact, it was also discovered that dogs have evolved extra facial muscles in order to lift their inner brow, in order to communicate with humans through expressions that wolves can't perform. That's right, dogs literally evolved puppy dog eyes to manipulate you. In addition to changing physically to express their love, dogs changed chemically too. It was found that when humans and dogs interact, both parties would release a chemical called oxytocin. Oxytocin, also called the cuddle chemical, is the chemical that facilitates behaviors such as recognition, trust, romantic attachment, and bonding between mothers and infants. So we can say that despite starting their evolutionary journey as man's worst enemy and being subjected to hundreds of years of dog show shenanigans, it is an inarguable fact that your dog loves you as much as you love it. But let's be honest with ourselves, we didn't need any science nerds to poke around doggy brains looking for chemicals to know that. Every time you come home from a long day at work or school and there's a dog in the house, you know that it's gonna run over, wag its tail, bark excitedly, and maybe even pee on your new carpet. And if that's not love, I don't know what is. Humans and dogs have been at each other's sides for literal thousands of years now. From the warmth of our campfires to the inside of our purses, dogs have always been there for us. And if our current relationship with our fur babies is anything to go off of, dogs are going to continue to be our best friend. Every year, around 3.1 million dogs enter shelters or foster homes in the US. You can find your own best friend by hitting up these organizations. Dogs are a big responsibility, so if you're not up for it, these organizations could always use your money and time, so feel free to donate or volunteer. And on that note, I think that's a good place to wrap up. If you enjoyed your time in my class, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This has been Happybara, and until next time, remember to be a friend to dogs, because in return, they're always gonna be a friend to you, whether you want them to or not. Class dismissed. No. Oh, gross. There goes the last eyeball.